do you love your work? Only about 10% of people in the world have a good job and love it. That's a pretty low number. I think we can do better with the help of AI for career guidance, for education. Like if you have that ideal advisor helping you find the right path, you won't wander in the wilderness for 40 years. You might find your path early and then become amazing at a career that you love.
I'm Insoo Hyun, Director of the Center for Life Sciences at the Museum of Science. Today my guest is Paul Allen, the founder of Ancestry.com and Soar AI. Today we talk about the ways in which AI can be used to uplift our humanity rather than replace it, transforming the ways in which we live and thrive. Paul, so great to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So you are the founder of a couple of really important companies, but one of the ones that I'm sure everybody's heard of is Ancestry.com. So when you founded that, sort of tell me a little bit about why you did that, what you were hoping to achieve, and did you achieve what you were hoping for?
That's a great question. So in 1990, my best friend and I started a CD-ROM publishing company, and it was called Infobases. My oldest brother, had started a search engine called Folio, and for about 10 years, Folio was the top search engine in the world. It was later acquired by LexisNexis, but it was keyword search on the desktop. So I got enamored by how Folio and the new field of CD-ROM would allow anyone to have thousands of books on a disk and have them keyword searchable in their own home. So our first company was called Infobases, and we licensed the Folio engine, and we said, we're going to put all the world's best books on CD-ROM so that everyone can learn anything at their own home electronic libraries. Little did we know that copyrights and permissions was going to be a really big challenge. So in 91, we licensed about 50 books from 2 major publishers. We built a collection of public domain content, and we made the Inc. 500, so we got into the millions in revenue. But there was a ceiling on it. CD-ROM distribution was only going to get so big. And I went to a conference in San Francisco in 95, September, called Internet Developers 2. And it was like amazing and discouraging because I'm like, CD-ROM's going to disappear. Nobody's going to be using it anymore. So this World Wide Web thing is going to be where all the content in the world exists. And I had started a master's degree in library science, so I spent tons of time in libraries. And every library has an old section on genealogy records or really ancient history. So I realized copyright law doesn't pertain. It's all public domain. So in September of 95, the concept of what if we put all the world's genealogy data on the internet? And that led to Ancestry.com in June of 96. We incorporated in July of 97. So that was the genesis.
Did you feel that Ancestry.com was in surprising ways filling some kind of important social need?
Oh, it's not surprising. Alex Haley, when he produced Roots, he wrote the book. And then in the 70s, I was like 12 years old when Roots came out. And everybody watched it, Kunta Kinte and those stories. And Alex Haley said it best. He said, there's a deep hunger in every one of us to know our heritage, to know where we came from. It's bone deep. And so Alex tapped into that. In the 70s, genealogy became a really big thing. And then we were there at the beginning of the internet boom. And, it's crazy that Ancestry was on the verge of being $1 billion company, 3 years in. So it tapped into something that's universal. Now, when we went to Silicon Valley to raise capital the first time, there was zero interest. Who were the venture capitalists on Sand Hill Road? Mostly guys in their 20s and 30s. Zero interest in this weird hobby of going to archives and courthouses and cemeteries and copying tombstone inscriptions and putting together your family tree. Our average customer was a 52-year-old and 60% female, 40% male. So there's this life cycle, I think, that as we become the last generation alive, as our parents age and pass away, there is kind of this baton that's passed. And now if we don't capture and preserve and pass down the stories, they disappear. So I think there's something innate and also universally as you get older that it becomes more and more important.
So when Ancestry.com was just getting started, you must have run your family history through that. I mean, you must have done that. And what did you find out?
So I grew up in Utah. And my ancestors settled in Utah from the 1850s to the 1860s, from all over the world, England, Denmark, Norway. And so the genealogy was done already, or largely.
Okay.
There's a tradition in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and I think it's very strong in the Jewish culture as well, that
Mhm.
genealogies matter. And in Asia,
Mhm.
it's astonishing
Oh, yeah.
how many
Oh, yeah, my family
centuries,
has
well,
a book like
thousands.
that. It goes back
Oh,
about 1,000 years.
the
Yeah.
global surveys we saw about the need to respect your elders and your ancestors, it's so off the charts in Asia and Europe. And I think the Western culture has a lot to learn from the Asian people about respecting older people and honoring them. So, but yeah, as we started figuring out, how do you build something like this, it was um, it was eye-opening in so many ways. The main thing I've learned is that venture capital can be a two-edged sword.
Mhm.
If you raise too much capital and they get control of the board, and that's what happened, they ended up shutting down our most important project
Mm.
after the
What
internet.
was that?
Well, since no young people were interested in funding a
Mhm.
genealogy research site,
Mhm.
I actually had a vivid dream one night that we built an intranet for every family in the world. Now, I grew up around WordPerfect
Mhm.
and Novell, and Novell was the world leader in intranets or networking software.
Mhm.
And so you would connect all the computers in a machine in a building, and people could share files with each other. The dream I had was an intranet for every family in the world, meaning extended family being connected over the internet.
Mhm.
And so as soon as we shared the idea of myfamily.com,
Mhm.
13 million, 33 million, 35 million in succeeding years,
Yeah.
everyone wanted to fund a social network for families,
Uh-huh.
and it got funded. And it led to tens of millions of users. It was so exciting. It was like 6 years before Facebook,
Yeah.
and it was strengthening and connecting families all over the world, and it had unlimited potential, but it wasn't generating revenue yet very much. It was not monetizing very well. And so we ended up losing that project. After the bubble burst and we cut costs and moved our headquarters from San Francisco back to Utah to cut costs, we got to cash flow positive again in 2001. But the casualty of our Series E funding was nobody wanted to fund myfamily.com,
Mhm.
even though it had 20 million users, was growing by a million a month. When I met Mark Zuckerberg in May of 2007 at a San Francisco conference called F8, they had 24 million users. We had 20 million users of myfamily.com 6 years before that, and it
Mhm.
was growing like crazy. So I am so sad to look back on
Yeah.
Ancestry is a $5 billion company. It's helped 100 million people discover their family stories. What if my family had continued
Mhm.
and had 1 billion people connected to their cousins, their
Mhm.
aunts, their uncles, their grandparents? I just think the world would be a better place if that hadn't suffered
Well,
the fate it did.
why was it so hard to monetize that?
Oh, it's interesting. We had some interesting theories about that.
Mhm.
So there are lots of different screen experiences. If you're watching television, you're watching a movie, you're watching sports, there's kind of sit back and watch, consume.
Mhm.
And then there's engaging thing like genealogy, which is a puzzle, and you're just engaged. We found we couldn't get people to click on an ad on ancestry.com.
Uh-huh.
So it was a subscription model.
Okay.
MyFamily.com had the highest average time on site of any website in 2000 and 2001, 33 minutes per session,
Wow.
because it was
Mhm.
I'm connecting to my brothers and sisters and sharing photos and messages and anniversaries and birthdays that are coming up, sharing recipes. It was a lean-in experience, and it was a very emotional experience to reconnect with family wherever they lived, and it was really low click-through rates on
Mhm.
ads.
Mhm.
So we started experimenting with e-commerce. We knew that families spend the most money on travel, on
Mhm.
education, on health. So over time, we would have built features and data sets that would have allowed people, instead of just connecting to your family members right now, oh, let's go do let's plan our family travel. Let's plan our next holiday. Let's give to our parents. What we actually invented something called pitch-in purchasing,
Mhm.
where 8 family members could pitch in on a gift for someone. So it was really early, too early for e-commerce, way too early to monetize with ads, at least the way that our site was designed. If we would have had another year or two, I'm sure we could have figured
Yeah.
out monetization.
Then what was the difference for Ancestry.com? How was that successful financially?
It was successful from the beginning.
Mhm.
We had 55 people sign up on the first day at $49 each.
Mhm.
So April of 97, we launched the subscription site.
So it's just sheer numbers of people.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was many days, 1,000 people a day signing up. And so it got into the tens of millions in revenue and then hundreds of millions in revenue. And then after I left, the DNA stuff was productized. We started down that path in 99, but the company made an acquisition and started doing the DNA testing and has scaled out. So I think Ancestry is probably over $1 billion in revenue, half from genealogy subscriptions, and I think half from DNA testing.
So let's fast forward to today. So now you're the founder of Soar AI, and take me through kind of like how did you go from? I'm sure there was lots that happened in between, Ancestry.com to Soar AI.
Yeah, there's a lot of chapters in between, but to kind of put it clearly, I'm addicted to search engines and great content. I just love the concept that computers can index all the world's knowledge. That has never changed. Doing genealogy indexing with, now 65 billion records, I think is the last number that Ancestry announced. That's pretty cool. But in a world that AI now understands language, then when you can take all the best books ever written in every subject and you can index that, but then you can turn it into machine learning models that people can interact with, there is no excuse in my mind for human misery or suffering due to ignorance. Because every device, properly designed and powered by AI, can bring knowledge, truth, wisdom, good principles, good best practices in every field to every human. So the Soar AI Studio is a venture studio or an AI studio where we've raised about $14 million, and we have a powerful search engine that can apply to any text or training material. We have AI that records calls and meetings. We have an AI that transcribes every public meeting in the United States so that democracy can be strengthened. If citizens know what's being done and said in every public meeting, the dying newspaper industry can be supplemented by an AI that writes, our Citizen Portal AI writes hundreds of thousands of news stories a month, freely available to every citizen in every city and town and state in the United States. So the potential for AI to uplift humanity in one field or one part of life after another is unlimited. And there are, of course, trillion-dollar companies raising, billions and billions of dollars, deploying billions of dollars. Our studio wants to just do good work to help strengthen families with AI, to help people learn how to become good friends with AI, deepen faith, deepen civic engagement, help people learn more faster than ever before. And so our educational AI. So it's an AI studio, and we'll have a dozen or more portfolio companies, each taking the same technology and applying it to try to help humans learn more and apply what they learn so they get the benefits of doing great work.
Well, I mean, that's such a optimistic vision of AI in the future and how it could help, as you said, uplift humanity. But, a lot of people have a pretty negative view of AI. It kind of has like a bad rep for many people that they think it might, do the opposite, kind of like, make our lives more challenging or replace workers. Do you think some of that or a lot of that negative attitude is deserved?
Oh,
by
for
the
sure.
technology?
It's very deserved. In fact, think of the harm that large tech has done, big tech has done on young people. The addictive nature of social networking and computer applications, they design them to give you dopamine hits all the time, and they monetize our attention. They auction off our time and attention to the highest bidder. So a lot of the big tech is now morphing from social or indexing the web to AI. Well, they have the same business model. The flaw of their business model is we sell time and attention to the highest bidder. The highest bidder on keyword auctions or web ad auctions doesn't have your long-term well-being in mind. So it's really simply a system design issue. If the business model is harmful, then the products they deploy will be harmful at scale. I'm actually quite alarmed that AI companions might become more addictive and engaging than social media and TikTok, which has trillions of hours of time being spent scrolling endlessly, mindlessly. The longer you scroll, the number and dumber you get.
Yeah.
And so it's really a design question. My father was a world-renowned engineer. He's in the National Academy of Engineering. He just got his 40th anniversary award
Wow.
3 weeks ago in Washington,
Great.
D.C., and my oldest brother and I were able to go see him honored. But he's one of like 2,400 people in the National Academy of Sciences or Engineering. My father had brilliant technology that basically analyzed the materials that could be used in manufacturing. He published the top textbook for materials engineering that was used for 30 years.
Wow.
So my dad understood the innate properties of all types of raw material and the processes you could put that material through with manufacturing of all kinds, machines and drills and presses, and create higher value goods from raw material. So in my dad's career, he met Edwards Deming, the architect of the Japanese economic miracle. My dad was a student. He heard Edwards Deming lecture in, I think, 1958. Well, Edwards Deming said that 94% of product flaws or mistakes that are in a factory are not caused by an individual employee making a mistake. It was a system design problem. I think we have a system design problem in modern capitalism and in modern tech and in big government. We have a system that just doesn't bring the outcomes, the results that we all want. What do we want? Peace and safety, a thriving society. We want every person to have opportunity, equal opportunity, and to take their unique talents and to learn and grow and reach their full potential and live a happy life. Like, I think there's one famous quote that says, happiness is the object and design of our existence, and it will be the end thereof if we pursue the path that leads to it. But I'm afraid that profit motive capitalism, where it's not conscious of the big impact on the overall society. In fact, one of the things I've studied a lot in my journey in history is the history of corporations. Corporations were not a thing. When my great-grandfather was born in Illinois in 1841, there were no such thing as corporations that could last forever, have unlimited assets, and grow as big as they want and have, obviously the Peter Thiel monopoly is what they seek so that they can raise prices. Anyway, capitalism was more like proprietorship, sole proprietorship, and you would grow your farm and you would, hire people and then you would pass away and some of your family would inherit things, but there weren't everlasting corporations. So that legislation happened in the 1850s and 60s in the UK and in the US. Now, I would argue that corporations have unlocked more prosperity than any other invention, because think of all the capital and resources that can be amassed and aimed at productivity increases that are unbelievable. So if you think about the modern world, getting people out of poverty has happened so fast the last few decades because of modern technology and capitalism. But I don't think the designers of that system have ever really thought about the well-being of all humans. And in an era of AI and robots potentially doing most of the work in the future, we think it's time to rethink and design a system potentially that could be good for all, that would take the best aspects of capitalism, the clearly free market, individual choice, individual agency, but potentially design a system that helps all humans discover their talent, learn the things they need to do to unlock that talent, and then have human thriving at a scale that's never been possible in history. I think that's a scenario. There's also the scenario where the current large, powerful companies continue down the path of exploiting people or selling our time and attention to the highest bidder, building AI companions that are more delightful to be with than our own family members or friends, and disconnecting us more and more from from being human and from living a great life.
I had a conversation recently with an AI entrepreneur, and we were talking about AI companions, and she admitted, a lot of the companies that are behind this work don't have necessarily the individual's best interests in mind, that you want to have them as engaged as often and as deeply as possible. That's how they generate revenue. But you're talking about it does swim against the tide of all that.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's going to win. I'm saying
Right.
it's not predetermined which direction we collectively as a society will go. It will take millions or billions of people voting with their feet or with their thumbs and saying, if there's an alternative, if there's actually an AI platform or series of AI tools that if you use them a little bit every day or a little bit every week, you'll live the most incredible life you can imagine. You'll be constantly it's like a GPS to live the best possible life, to become the best version of yourself. I think that can be designed. I think it's being designed. But the question is, will our dopamine addiction and our ease of just like scrolling mindlessly and the video game addiction, all those things, will that rule the day? Or could we get away from our lizard brain and actually think a little bit more deeply about a life well lived? I was thinking about Clayton Christensen today as I woke up and was thinking about my talk here tonight about the year of being human here at the Boston Museum of Science. And Clayton Christensen wrote a fantastic book called How Will You Measure Your Life? And he argued for intentionality about what kind of life do you want to live? Companies have business plans. Do you have a plan and a strategy to use your time, which is very limited, and your talents, and aim for the things you care about most? Will you end up getting that? Ralph Waldo Emerson said that you're only going to get the life that you choose, that you decide. That's the person you're going to become is the one you decide to become. So I think there's some interesting moments in the next year to 2 to 5 years before ASI and AGI, start making it possible for robots and AI to do so much productive work. I think we don't have a lot of time to design systems that are really good for all of us. And that's what we're aiming to do at SOAR AI Studio, is attract talent and resources so that we can unleash the best concepts and ideas that will help individuals live their best life. And like you said, swim against the tide, which is maybe going in a direction that isn't going to be healthy long term.
Do you have a concept of human flourishing where it's kind of somewhat Aristotelian, right? That everyone kind of has their own kind of way in which they can live a good life based on their capacities and their innate abilities and kind of how they're situated in society. And so for them, it's sort of aligning their activities or desires or values with this kind of like innate kind of unfolding of your capacities. Or do you think it's much more sort of open-ended than that you can just kind of like take advice from anybody and kind of construct together the good life, right? So is the good life something that you just kind of like, it's like a shopping cart. You just kind of like put things in it and you have a pretty robust shopping cart? Or is it more of like an inner unfolding of something?
I love how you asked that question. And I believe that everything I am trying to work towards is the former. It's the unfolding. So SOAR, the word SOAR comes from a great psychologist in the 20th century, Dr. Donald O. Clifton. He's the father of strength psychology and the grandfather of positive psychology. He's been honored. He died in 2003. But as my father spent his life doing taxonomies of raw materials and parts and processes and machines that could add high value to raw material, Don Clifton did that with human talent and potential. He and his research assistants interviewed hundreds of thousands of top performers in hundreds of occupations over a 50-year period. And he built a taxonomy of human talent. And that is individual to each person. If you take the Clifton Strengths Assessment, which is like $25, and you answer the 177 very clever questions that Don Clifton came up with, he will then reflect back to you in language of strengths, what are your top 5 greatest talents? So when I took it in 2012, I was so blown away that this assessment, this psychometric assessment, told me everything good about me, and it explained everything I had done in the previous 30 years in work. I have learner, number 1. I have input, number 2. Now, nobody as a high school or college teacher or counselor is going to sit you down and say, you have a great talent called input. What the heck is input? No one ever told me that. Well, guess what a person with input does? They're obsessed with gathering resources or materials and dispensing it to other people. So put all the world's best books on CD-ROM, that was my input. Gather all the world's genealogy and make it available, that was my input. I have ideation, number 3. So to your point, that question about what is the good life, it's individualized.
Mhm.
And I think that most advice that people who love you and care about you give you is wrong for you. I have a theory called the advice resonance theory. I think 90% of the advice you've gotten in your life from people who know you and love you is wrong for you, right for them.
Mhm.
They were speaking from their frame of like,
Mhm.
hey, if you want to be a great leader, do this, this, and this. Well, that worked for someone with these strengths. A strength is simply a recurring pattern of thinking, feeling, behaving that can be applied productively. So I believe that the unfolding, I think AI is the first modern invention that can take knowledge about you,
Mhm.
your operating system, which Don Clifton and other psychometric assessments can tell you. Once your patterns of thinking, feeling, behaving are properly understood, and then you decide what your values and goals are, that fed into an AI could literally help you live your
Mhm.
best life. And I don't think
Interesting.
that's ever been possible till now.
I'm a firm believer in everybody has their own distinctive way of flourishing. And you know it when you hit upon activities that really resonate, has staying power, kind of gives you just like homeostasis and comfort level. And you get in that groove. And that's different for so many people.
It's very different. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, the great psychologist who invented the term flow state,
Mhm.
I think what Ralph Waldo Emerson said that get as many good hours as you can in your lifetime. That's wisdom.
Mhm.
Well, my oldest son, has kind of come to believe that how many hours in flow state is a predictor of how well you've lived your life. So, but it's different for each person. I get in flow state with ideation and with learning, and other people have totally different strengths. And so I think, it's a very personalized thing. If you think about whether we're designed by evolution or by a loving creator,
Mhm.
doing what you're designed to do feels good,
Yeah.
and not doing what you were designed to do never feels right. You're
Yeah.
off. Something's out of kilter. So if more people can use AI to guide them to do what they were designed to do and to get into flow state as often as possible. And also, Don Clifton's book, Soar With Your Strengths, makes it very clear that human flourishing comes mainly not only by the work you do and what you're doing, but who you're doing it with.
Mhm.
Relationships matter a great deal.
Yeah.
And he found that from every successful person that he ever interviewed, it could be traced back to the people who saw potential in them, or the people who coached them, or the people who gave them their first shot. It's all about who you know. Don Clifton said every human should have a board of directors. You should invite people that see your potential and that care about you to be your board. And I think Clayton Christensen probably would think that's a good idea too. But, how many people have ever done that in the history of the world? Well, what if an AI system made it drop dead easy for you to, number one, fill up your calendar with things that will develop your strengths and let you get flow state as often as you can, and connect you to the people, the family, the friends, the coworkers, the collaborators with whom you will do your best work and create the most meaningful memories and have just magical moments. Like, that's with people. And we're living in a society with more material abundance than ever before in history, and people are lonelier and more anxious and depressed than ever before in recorded history.
Yeah.
I think it's a design problem, and it's a choice option for each of us.
I think you're really onto something. In philosophy, which is the discipline that I was trained in, is secular moral philosophy. There are different theories about what it means to live a good human life. And a very early predominant one was just basically desire satisfaction. Get as many desires as you can satisfied in your lifetime. And people thought, well, that's like a philosophy for pigs, right? Because you can have like the wrong kinds of desires. So then the next theory said, no, it's not just any desires you happen to have, but it's your informed desires. If you are well informed, what should you desire? And it's when you have those desires satisfied that you have a good life. And I always thought that's a little weird. It's not desiring anymore. It's like being informed. It's kind of having the right setup between what you want and what's out there in the world. And there's a very famous philosopher named Peter Railton at University of Michigan. And he came up with this idea of like, imagine you have an ideal advisor. If your ideal advisor knows everything about you and can say, here's you, here are your capacities, here's what you're capable of, your talents, here are activities in the world, and I'll match them for you. I will tell you which things you should have an informed desire for. The ideal advisor kind of way of like, navigating through life. It sounds a lot like what you're describing,
I've
right?
never heard that
But it
concept before, but it's
completely
totally
aligns
resonant.
with like with a pretty predominant predominant view in moral philosophy about the informed desire approach, kind of reinterpreted as an ideal advisor. Yeah, I mean,
I totally love that.
an ideal advisor loves you, or they care about you, they know you really well. And it's not saying, here's what I would want, because you said, yeah, that's how a lot of advice giving is done,
Yeah.
right? It's like, it's like knowing you and
Yeah.
looking at the world out there. I will match you up. And when you know you have these durable relations that fit between your desires and your activities, because you hit that groove. It's like a comfortable place to be. You don't want to shift out of that.
Ideal advisor, if you use the first letter of each word, is IA. And we're talking about AI, but I love the
It's
possible
similar,
marriage. It's
right?
very similar. Now, many of the top AI models that we chat with and interact with on a day-to-day basis are actually built on something fascinating called the mixture of experts architecture.
Mhm.
So if you ask a math question of Gemini, it might route you to a algorithm or model or a subset of the overall LLM
Mhm.
that is math focused. So one of the things we're exploring with Soar AI when we launch it is that we want you to pick which experts you want advice from on an ongoing basis. So
Mhm.
we don't have a formal relationship with Dave Ramsey, but he's apparently helped millions of people get out of debt, be financially prudent, tear up your credit cards, like
Mhm.
have discipline, pay as you go, all that stuff. So maybe there's a Dave Ramsey expert and you plug that into your Soar AI, and now you have that guidance to help you boost your financial well-being.
Mhm.
One of the things that Gallup has done beautifully, in addition to the StrengthsFinder assessment or the Clifton Strengths Assessment, they've been doing the World Poll since 2005, and they power the United Nations Happiness Index. So when Gallup decided to do a world poll for the next 100 years, they gathered a whole bunch of Nobel Prize winning intellectuals and academics and authors to say, what questions should we ask the world, and what's the framework for determining well-being? Instead of using happiness or joy, they chose to use well-being. And they have 5 elements of well-being. They've published extensively about it. So your career or purpose well-being is a hugely important one. Do you love your work? Only about 10% of people in the world have a good job and love it.
Mhm.
That's a pretty low number. I think we can do better with the help of AI for career guidance, for education. Like if you have that ideal advisor helping you find the right path, you won't wander in the wilderness for 40 years. You might find your path early and then become amazing at a career that you love. So anyway, I think there's some really exciting possibilities to help 5 times more people find a job they love. Maybe almost everybody eventually could. But I think there's a lot in the elements of well-being: physical health,
Mhm.
financial well-being, social, community, and career purpose.
Mhm.
Those are the 5 that need to be tackled, and we think there's about 21 subcategories that will be woven into the design of Soar AI, with the hope that experts like Dave Ramsey on finance or whatever, top experts in all these fields, will come to us and partner with us so that there could be a mixture of experts. But people should choose their expert. Maybe they love Mother Teresa and they want to be informed by her on a regular basis. They want to have a devotional every day with scripture or thoughts from Mother Teresa. Like choose your board of directors, choose your ideal advisor
Mhm.
mixture of experts,
Mhm.
and then deploy that on your life and see what happens.
So, if one could design AI to be something like this ideal advisor that comes from philosophy, I think that'd be a wonderful way to go, because one of the constraints about the ideal advisor is not just that they know everything about the world, they know everything about you, but they really care about you.
Yes, I love that.
And it's that element of having your best interests at heart, which I think gets lost in a lot of the discussions around AI.
It
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 would restore that.
it really does, and I think there's a big move that all of us can choose to take in the coming years. I don't know if it'll be next month, next year, 5 years from now. But if you think about it, Frank McCourt, who used to own the Dodgers, has published a really monumentally important book called Our Biggest Fight, and he argues that our data
Mhm.
is a human right, that our data is an extension of our personhood, and that our digital data should belong to us individually, not to the trillion-dollar companies who just have hoovered up all of our data. We've clicked on terms of use, and so now they have all of our data: health data, finance data. They augment it with purchasing of data from data brokers. These trillion-dollar companies are monetizing us because they own our data. But we didn't really, as a society or legally, say we agree to that. So there are open source protocols. There are things happening I can't announce right now, but there is a possibility that each of us, with our devices, our computers and our smartphones and our tablets, could argue for and get and choose to adopt a new world view or way of interacting with the world where the corporations have to come to us to get access to our data. And that the prompt engineering has become a key skill for all of us interacting with LLMs. Context engineering is 100 times more important than prompt engineering. Context is your content. It's the ideal advisor, what they know about you. That should belong to you and be stored on your own device. That should not be amassed by corporations who are not caring about you. They don't actually love you. And they're going to use that knowledge and that data to exploit you. Mm-hmm. And we've seen the consequences for 20 years on smartphones and social media. So what if the ideal advisor is combined with technology that allows each of us to own and control our own data because we care about ourselves and love, each other more than the corporations do? Mm-hmm. I think there's a really interesting mix of the philosophy that you described, mm-hmm. the technology that we're partnering with a lot of great people to enable, and maybe we emerge in the 2030s with an option for people to opt into a way of navigating the digital world where your data belongs to you, your context belong to you, your ideal advisor is chosen by you to help you live your best life based on the talents you've been given and the relationships that you have and the relationships that you could have with, venturing out and building your own network. So I think there's a recipe ahead for mm-hmm. almost everyone to follow that will not guarantee a great life. There's natural disasters, there's geopolitical things that are outside of our control. But what we can do, and I think Covey said this well, you've got a circle of control where you actually get to decide. That's one of the great gifts that we have. We have life and we have freedom to choose. So that circle of control is important. We should spend as much time doing things that we are controlling instead of circle of influence is, we have some influence on others. Circle of concern seems to be where almost all of us are residing all of the time, especially if you look at stress, anxiety, and depression. If you can't do anything about it, I don't know what the philosophers would say, but don't sweat the stuff that you can't really, just instead narrow your focus on the things that you can do and that can bring you peace and joy on a day-to-day basis. And that's your relationships and using your talents to benefit the world. So I think there's interesting times ahead for sure.
We grew up in the time where we didn't have all this kind of technology, smartphones, internet. We didn't have everything at the tips of our fingertips. We had to kind of relate to people and ride our bikes everywhere. And so I wonder, though, are you worried that we're at risk of losing that kind of world, or some kids growing up these days never knowing that type of world?
No, it's already happened. It's really sad to me that most kids just spend almost no time outdoors. They just aren't exploring, and they're on their devices endlessly all the time. So I think it's already happened. The question is, can we turn that back? I know a lot of, after Jonathan Haidt's last book came out, a lot of school districts are banning cell phones, and I think that's an interesting approach. But, parents give their 3-year-olds tablets, and then they just get engaged. And so I'm afraid that Pandora's box has already been opened. The question is, can we change that? And as we go from devices to ambient computing and wearables, maybe there's a world where we have augmented reality, but it's not always a screen that we're looking at where it's blocking what we're seeing or who we're with. It's so funny to go to restaurants and see, 8 college students on their devices and they're not even talking or looking at each other. I mean, it's just, we're all doing that these days. But I actually think there's a design principle that's super important for AI companies and for app companies. And that is, when Google first started its search engine, their key metric for success was how little time you spent on their site. If you came to Google and did a search and 3 seconds later you clicked and you never came back, Google knew that their algorithm worked. And that was awesome. They were optimizing for your success briefly on their site so you go get, what you need. My favorite AI character is not Jarvis from Iron Man. There's a lot of AI characters that are in science fiction. My favorite character representing AI is Janet from The Good Place. Janet is this awesome actress, Darcy Carden, and Ted Danson was in that show, and this is a great show where all these people die. They don't know if they're in the good place or the bad place, and so for several seasons they're trying to figure that out. But Darcy is this kind of super intelligence named Janet, and she's all-knowing, and anytime someone calls for her, she shows up, answers their question, and disappears.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of like Google's original search engine, I think Janet from The Good Place is a fantastic design aspiration. How little interaction is required so that you can go back and do your life. And so imagine, I guess you could say, Apple has screen time limits that you can impose on yourself. I have a friend who's a CEO who's done that, and I think that's a start. But I think there's a world in which we say, I'm going to use my AI half an hour every morning. I don't know. But the goal is to have it coach you on your calendar for the day, who you're going to be with, what work you're going to do, so you can optimize your flow state. So I don't know. I think it's early in the evolution. I mean, on my walk over to a lunch meeting today, I chatted with ChatGPT for half an hour, asking questions about Boston, famous people that had lived here, Ralph Waldo Emerson quotes. So it was a very good use of a half hour of walking time. I don't know what I gave up. There's a trade-off. Anything you do, you're giving up something else. So I could have probably stopped at some historical signs, and we could have had a different Boston 30-minute walk. But I think each of us is going to have to decide, when is it too much? When is it too little? What's the right balance? And as a society, we don't want to probably force it on everybody to do it one way. But I think I think there might be a future world where when you're born and you become a teenager or college age or whatever, the technology platforms you choose to use or live on will be the biggest predictor of your life well lived or an abysmal life of abject loneliness. I actually think it might be those technology platforms are so powerful. That ideal advisor is a good aspiration. What about the net opposite of that? An AI that the more you use it, the more miserable and lonely you feel. That's coming, and maybe it's already here. But I think that little time, great benefit is a thing to aspire to.
So I really think you're onto something. In fact, there are some philosophers who would agree with the approach that you're taking in terms of what it means to live a good life. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you. I hope we can continue it another time. This has been so much fun.